Shall we step back in time and stand upon a speck of earth that floats like a dark ember in the blue lungs of the world? Imagine, you wake on a lonely island in the middle of the endless Pacific. The roar of waves pounds against black volcanic cliffs, the wind cuts your skin, and in the mist you see them, giant stone faces staring silently into the horizon. You think they're just statues for tourists? In truth, these Moai are guardians of an entire civilization, built on faith, pride, and sacrifice, and their mystery still defies the world. Walk with me now, barefoot across cooled lava and razor grass, and listen closely. This place speaks in stone. Before there were names, before there were the carved eyes and the red topknots balancing like suns at dusk, there was only the island itself, raw, volcanic, newborn. Imagine the Earth's crust tearing in a slow-motion wound miles below your feet. Imagine magma blooming upward, seething into the ocean where it hissed into black glass. From that undersea fire, 3 volcanoes rose, Taravaka in the north, the island's broad-backed giant, Poik in the east, ancient and quiet, and Reno Kau in the southwest, its cliff a broken tooth biting the sea. Between these fiery siblings, cinders and ash and lava knitted themselves into a single island like stitches pulled tight. Centuries passed. Rock cooled. Wind learned the contours of the land. And then, at last, silence. Stand at the edge of Reno Kau's crater as the morning arrives. A bowl of emerald water rimmed by walls of stone, reeds stippling the surface like a painter's careful strokes. The air carries a taste of salt and iron. A petrel knifes the wind, black and fast, and vanishes into the cliff. Below you the Pacific breathes, inhaling and exhaling against the island's ribs. There is no other land within the distance your eyes can imagine. No rescuing shoreline, no friendly arc of green. Just the ocean, a living mirror turning its face towards sun and moon. You hear the ocean's voice as a constant, elemental heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. To one direction spreads the ahu of a later age, stone platforms like prows of grounded ships. But to the other everything is older, untamed. Basalt fragments in the grass glint with dew. The soil is dark, the color of night that has been tilled. If you kneel and touch it, a damp coolness rises into your fingers, and you feel how even in a place this small the land once held more life than it does now. You do not yet know whose feet will press paths into this soil, or which prayers will curl through the air at dawn, but you sense the pressure of time gathering like clouds. Let's wander the perimeter of the island as the sun climbs. We start near the cliffs called Orongo, where, much later, houses of stone will crowd the ridge like sleeping seals. For now it's only wind and sky. You lean into the gale and walk, each step a conversation with gravity, each gust carrying the faint cry of seabirds and the wet slap of surf. The cliff edge is a lesson in caution. One quick toe too close and you drop among spindrift and feather, a pinwheel of panic, before the cold takes you flat and final. The cliff's rock is old lava, crisped and pitted, and in places it crumbles beneath your hand like burnt bread. Round the corner of the coast, the island's face changes. The cliffs soften into shelves, and the shelves into small beaches cupped in coves. Here the ocean is still a god, but a gentler one. The sand is coarse and golden, studded with shells like discarded earrings. You see turtle tracks like braided ropes climbing and falling back from the tide line. The waves roll in with a rhythm that lulls without promising safety. Every 7th wave is a little bigger, a little meaner, and it breaks with a fanged hiss across a scatter of lava teeth. Tilt your head. Listen to the difference between foam sighing over sand and water cutting over stone. Close your eyes. Feel the island's scales settle into your bones. 20-odd kilometers long, 10 wide at its fattest, a triangle of land just spacious enough for dreaming and dangerous enough for those dreams to cost you everything. Up on Taravaka, the air grows clearer, colder, thinner somehow, though you've climbed only a modest height. You see the whole island, a black triangle stitched in green seam work, dotted with pale scars where earth shows through the grass. You see Reino Raraku in the east, the quarry that will one day become a kind of theater where stone is coaxed from sleeping mountain, statues half-born and frozen mid-emergence, as if a chorus of giants paused in their climb to watch the weather. You see Poik, wind-chewed, its soil lighter, its slopes smooth as if a careful hand had sanded them with time. Beyond every edge is water, endless and bright, light making quicksilver armor of the waves. Isolation is a material on this island. You can touch it. It lives in the way your footsteps vanish into grass with no path to join, no road that extends beyond the horizon. It lives in the way the wind carries only its own stories. No smoke from a neighboring valley, no drumbeat of a far-off festival, no scent of cinnamon from a busy port. The nearest inhabited land, beyond the concept of merely far, might as well be another planet. Imagine being born here, never having seen a mountain taller than these soft volcanoes, never having watched a river run or the sky crowd with city light. Imagine losing count of days that are all ocean at the edges. And yet, isolation is not emptiness. The island is busy with small, stubborn lives. Ferns cling in the cracks, velvet soft. Lizards flicker among stones, the movement too quick to name until it's gone. Bitter herbs creep low and hardy, their scent waking in the afternoon heat like a dragon exhaling in miniature. In places, the land remembers forests, the deep, old kind that hushes the air under its leaves. Once, there were palms here, tall and straight, that combed the sky with fronds and swayed like green metronomes for centuries. Now, their children exist only as whispers in the soil, as shells of seeds buried and broken, as borrowed strength in the language of wood that will one day be impossible to find. At dusk the island changes its mind about color. The Moai, those watchful faces, are not yet standing, but shapes of stone lie where time left them, like sleeping cattle on distant slopes. The sky bruises purple and gold as the sun falls into a sea that eats it in a single gulp. Stars come as a revelation. So many they don't look separate, rather a milk of fire poured across the black. You lie back on warm rock, and the wind rakes your hair with salt fingers. Somewhere out there, you think, are roads of wind and current that could carry a canoe. Somewhere out there are people who read those roads, who name them and memorize their curves, who can feel a change and swell the way you feel a change in mood. You do not know their names yet, but you will. The island breathes at night in a different meter. The ocean's thunder thickens into a bass you feel in your ribs. The insects discover a kind of choir. The sky's spine, the Milky Way, arches clean as a blade from horizon to horizon. You can navigate by it if you know how. If you've learned in another life how to track the low glide of the Southern Cross, how to read the purring shimmer where warm currents slip beneath cold ones, how to listen to swell lines that boom against your hull in a steady two-count. Left shoulder, right shoulder, bow, until you can turn without sight, by ear alone. The island, asleep now, dreams of those navigators. It dreams of canoes carved from trees that do not grow here, of sails woven from fibers that will one day be scarce, of people who will bless the wind and name the reefs and measure the coast with their feet and their stories. When dawn unwraps the sky again, the wind is sharp as a whetstone and the light is unforgiving in its honesty. The island is small. The island is beautiful. The island is a challenge addressed to the human animal. Can you live here? Can you wrest good meals from lean soil and clean water from brackish pools and shelter from a weather that does not care for your calendar? Can you feed children from gardens coaxed out of fractured lava? Can you grow a great idea in a tiny place? You wander inland. The grass is knee-high, and your fingers find tiny coils of pumice hidden near the root, so light they feel like crumbs of cloud. The land breaks suddenly into a hollow, and you drop into it like a pebble into a well. Inside, the wind softens, and you notice a quiet warmth rising from the soil. It feels like a hidden hearth. One day people will build manavai here, stone circles to protect gardens from wind, to trap the earth's heat and conserve precious moisture. They will plant taro and sweet potato, banana and sugar cane, the island's pantry assembled with care under the sky's unpredictable temper. But for now, we simply stand in the hollow and notice how, even in a place of constant noise, there are pockets of hush. Out near Reino Raraku, the quarry that sleeps like a lion with its head on its paws, the wind learns a new voice, thin, whistling, curious. It curls in the cuts and creases of tuff, a softer volcanic rock that will yield to stone and sweat, and it speaks in vowels, O, triple A, E, a language of hollow things. You press your palm to the quarry wall. It is cool, not indifferent, exactly, but self-contained, like a field of snow that cannot be hurried to melt. Here, the Moai will be born. Here, iron-rich tools will bite hour after hour with the scrape of stone against stone, and faces will emerge with stern lips and long noses and eyes that will one day hold coral whites. The mountain will surrender thousands of ancestors to the hands of the living. It will also keep some of them for itself, half-carved and abandoned, as reminders that even the most determined human vision is answerable to time. Let's sit on a ledge and look out across what will become a crowded landscape. Try to hear it before it exists. The groan of wooden rollers under impossible weight, the grunt and shout of men heaving together, the hiss of ropes dragging over rough ground, the slap of bare feet on dusty paths. Imagine dragging a 10-meter statue across a barren plain with nothing but ropes and sheer will, feeling each pulse of effort burn the muscles in your back until every fiber sings. Imagine the relief when the statue shifts forward a fraction, the way a breath suddenly doubles in your chest, the way 20 hands feel like a single organism straining toward a common dream. Imagine the arguments, too, which line to pull, where to wedge the lever stone, who commands, who follows. See how sweat makes a polished shine of shoulders and arms, how dust clings in beards and hair, how silence falls in a circle before a new command. You are still alone, for now, with only the future rustling in the grass. The ocean gives its counsel in monochrome repetition. The sky does its best to distract you with clouds whose shadows sprint across the hills like a herd of invisible deer. Your thoughts are embers blown hot by the wind. What story could force a people to bend a mountain to their will? What faith could teach them to carve the faces of their dead in stone taller than houses? What hunger could drive them so close to the edge of their island's limits that the soil itself would cry out? In this early quiet, listen for names building like surf. Hiva, the remembered homeland far to the west in the imagination of later chance. Hotumadue, the king who will step out of legend and into lineage. Anakena, the beach where feet will press first prints, and where a woman with long hair will comb the morning sun into shine. Ahutangariki, where a row of Moai will one day stand like a council of elders, stern and unamused by human bravado. These names are seeds waiting for the rain of history. By midday the island shimmers with heat. The grass rattles like a million paper tongues. You crave shade and find none, only the thin mercy of a cloud's passing. In the distance, gulls worry something at the shoreline, a fish or a secret. The air tastes like a copper coin. You think of water, sweet, cool, hidden in caves where fresh aquifers kiss the sea, where later people will crawl with torches into the earth's mouth to draw up liquid blessings in gourds. The island is a test of patience. It gives in small handfuls. It requires in armfuls. But it is not cruel. It simply refuses to flatter your sense of control. When rain finally comes, it appears first as a rumor, the far line of the ocean darkening, then a faint hiss, then a smell like stone remembering. The drops arrive with conviction. They bounce from rock, they sow themselves into your clothes, they turn paths into ink strokes. For a brief hour the island glows as if lit from within. The crater lakes wink brighter, their surfaces dappling into coin scales. The reeds sip and sigh. From somewhere in the hillside comes a strange laughter, wind trapped in a lava tube, finding an echo chamber to play with. You tilt your face and open your mouth and taste the water that will one day feed gardens and brew rituals and cool the foreheads of fevered children. The rain passes as quickly as it came, and the island exhales a wet warmth that makes your skin feel newly made. Evening now, and with it the urge to count. You count waves until you lose track, sheep of the sea leaping a fence of rock. You count birds gliding home in thin wedges of shadow. You count breaths between gusts. You count the first stars as they needle holes in the darkening cloth above. You count questions that have no answers yet, and then stop counting altogether because the island prefers mysteries to tallies. Out on the water, black dorsals of swell keep shouldering toward shore. Farther beyond even this horizon, currents carry secrets. The hum of distant archipelagos, the rumor of canoes, the soft vowel strings of languages braided with salt and story. You sleep in a hollow between stones, the ground cupping your body like a careful hand. In your dream, stone moves. It leans. It breathes. It listens to chants shaped like wind, to drums made from skins stretched over frames. It watches as red scoria is lifted like captured sunlight and set upon a brow. It feels the grip of rope and the tremor that runs through 100 knuckles as weight shifts. It hears a name, repeated, and another, each a person once alive, now petitioned through the focus of a carved giant. Stone does not forget. Stone does not forgive easily either. It is always itself. Wake with the first bird. The light isn't gold yet, it's gray, a thin soup poured into the bowl of the sky. You stand and stretch and feel the small soreness of sleeping on ground not designed for softness. The island wakes in layers, first the insects, then the birds, then the ocean pretending to be louder, then the wind clearing its throat. Across the slope, the quarry broods. You imagine the first cautious chip from a dull adze, the first struck spark from rock against rock, the first line scored in the mountain's skin to guide a profile you cannot yet see. The mountain is patient. People are not. Something about that friction will make a culture here, the long mind of stone braided with the fast heart of human need. Walk with me to the shore one more time before we leave this beginning. Feel how the sand is cool in the shadow of a dune, hot where the sun declares it. Watch a single crab write a frantic letter to the sea, backward, sideways, its punctuation tiny commas of footprints. Step into the water. It is neither welcoming nor hostile. It is pure element, as honest as fire. Out beyond the first break, the water deepens to the blue of a bruise you'll remember a lifetime. You float for a minute, and the island shrinks to a shape you could hold in your palm if only you had hands huge enough. From here, it's impossible to believe any people could make a life of permanence here. And yet they will. They will carve their dead into the mountain. They will argue with the wind and sometimes win. They will build altars from stones they coax into fitting like words in a careful sentence. They will look upon the sea and see not prison but passage. Stand again dripping and shake the salt from your eyes. The horizon is empty of sails. The birds do not carry news. But the air hums with a feeling just shy of sound, and if you've learned anything by now it's that the island offers warnings and invitations in the same breath. The Moai do not yet stand. The Ahu are not yet stacked. The chants have not yet been taught to the dawn. But the island is ready. The stone has been listening for a long time. We will leave this first, silent island with the taste of salt still on our tongues and the wind's old song tucked behind our ears. When we return, the ocean's road will be bearing canoes, sleek, double-hulled, their sails bellied with borrowed sky. In them families, seeds, gods carried as memory and as words, fire cradled like a heartbeat, and courage, that quiet kind that looks like calm. The land will meet them. The stone will size them up. The story of guardians will begin. Picture this. We drift away from the silent stone guardians, the Moai, and let the wind carry us back across centuries, across waves that roll endlessly. The island does not change. Its cliffs are the same, its black volcanic earth is the same, but now the horizon is broken by something new. A fleet of long, slender canoes appears, cutting through the surf with paddles that rise and fall in steady rhythm. Each canoe carries families, tools, seeds, and stories. These are the first settlers, voyagers who have crossed half the Pacific guided only by the stars, by memory, and by faith in their gods. Imagine the silence of that ocean journey. No birds for days, no land in sight, only the swell and sigh of waves against the canoe. At night, the sky blazed with constellations so bright they seemed close enough to touch. The voyagers read them as if they were words written by ancestors, each star marking a path across the water. By day, they studied the color of waves, the flight of a lone bird, the drift of clouds. They could sense unseen islands by watching how swells broke, how fish changed, how salt tasted in the spray. Now think of stepping ashore. The island is raw, alive with winds that sweep over barren slopes of volcanic rock. Palm forests whisper in the breeze, seabirds cry overhead, and everywhere there is the promise of new beginnings. The voyagers drag their canoes onto black sand beaches, the wood scraping and groaning as waves resist their landing. Their feet sink into unfamiliar soil, damp and rich, still holding the memory of fire from ancient eruptions. They have arrived at the edge of the world, and there is no going back. They bring with them the memory of other islands, Hawaii, the legendary homeland. They carry taro and yam, bananas and sugarcane, seeds wrapped carefully in fiber, roots protected in bundles of damp earth. They carry chickens and rats, both companions and curses. They carry songs, genealogies, prayers whispered into the night. Everything needed to remake the world on this lonely speck of land. At first, life is abundant. The forests are thick with trees that tower like cathedrals, their trunks straight and strong, perfect for canoes and for fires. The soil is fresh, yielding crops easily. The seas are generous, giving fish and turtles, while seabird colonies offer eggs in such number that a child might collect a basket in a single morning. The settlers build their first homes from palm trunks and thatch, their fires glowing orange against the darkness of the ocean night. And yet, every act of survival is heavy with ritual. They cannot simply plant crops, they must chant to the gods of fertility. They cannot fish without offerings to the spirits of the sea. The island is not empty, it is filled with presence. Spirits dwell in cliffs, in caves, in the very stones underfoot. Each step into the land is a negotiation with the unseen. Imagine waking in one of these first huts. The roof rustles with wind, the smell of smoke clings to your hair, and beyond the doorway, the Pacific stretches out like eternity. You eat breadfruit roasted over coals, soft and sweet, and drink water from streams that tumble down volcanic slopes. At night you gather with others around a fire, listening to elders speak of the homeland far across the ocean, their voices low and rhythmic, mixing memory with myth. Children stare into the flames, already dreaming of how this new land will be theirs. Slowly clans form. Each family carves out its portion of the island, building stone walls to mark taro fields, planting groves, raising chickens in coops of woven reeds. Leaders emerge, chiefs whose mana, spiritual power, is believed to flow from their ancestors. Society takes root here, as solid as the volcanic stone. And with society comes rivalry, ambition, pride. But those tensions are still distant. For now, the air is filled with the crackle of fires, the crash of surf, the laughter of children learning to swim in tide pools. The people sing to the stars that guided them, and they look inland, at slopes waiting to be shaped. The island is theirs, but it is also alive, watching, waiting. And as they gaze at the cliffs, they begin to dream of something more, of figures carved from stone, faces that will outlast the sea spray, the wind, even the people themselves. The Moai are not yet born, but the thought of them is already stirring, like a shadow in the volcanic rock. Close your eyes for a moment and stay with me on the shore. The canoes rest like tired animals on the sand, their wood drying in the salt air. Families have settled, gardens grow in circles of stone, and chants now echo at dawn and dusk. But something begins to stir in the hearts of the people, something more permanent than the woven huts. more enduring than the crops in the soil. Look inland, toward the slopes of Reino Raraku, the quarry that sleeps like a lion with its head on its paws. There, in the volcanic tuff, the birth of giants is about to begin. It starts with a whisper, a story repeated at night around the fire. The chiefs tell of ancestors watching from beyond, their eyes fixed on the living. A people cannot survive without the strength of their forefathers, they say. The land is hard, the ocean endless, and only by honoring those who came before can balance be kept. And so the idea grows, the ancestors must stand with them, not just in memory, but in stone. Imagine the first cut into the rock. A stone adze strikes, its edge biting into soft volcanic tuff. The sound is sharp, metallic, like a chisel ringing on bone. A man leans into the work, sweat dripping from his brow, the rhythm steady. One chip becomes a groove deepens into a line. Others join him. Soon, a profile emerges, stern, elongated, its nose proud, lips pressed as though holding back words meant only for the gods. The first moai is not yet finished, but already it seems alive, as if the mountain is exhaling a spirit trapped in its body. The people gather at the quarry to watch. Smoke from cooking fires drifts upward, mingling with dust. Children scamper among the tools, their laughter carried away by the wind. Women bring food to the workers, taro wrapped in leaves, roasted chicken, water gourd cool against the lips. This is no small labor. Weeks stretch into months, months into years. Each blow of stone on stone is a prayer, each carved line a bridge between flesh and spirit. You run your hand across the quarry wall, and it is rough where tools have not yet touched, smooth where hundreds of hours have polished a cheekbone. Statues lie everywhere, some half-born, their heads still anchored to the bedrock, as if caught in the act of rising. Others lie fallen along the slope, abandoned when cracks appeared or when weight proved too great to move. Each unfinished figure is a story paused, a sentence left incomplete in the language of stone. But those that are completed, they are miracles of vision. Tall as 10 men, heavy as a dozen whales, their forms seem impossible for a society with no iron, no wheels, no beasts of burden. And yet here they stand, or rather lie waiting. Their eyes are not yet carved, for eyes give life, and that sacred step must wait until the statue is raised upon its platform. But even blind, they command the landscape. Their silence is not empty, it hums like the sea in your ears after a long dive. Why this shape, you might wonder? Why the elongated faces, the long ears, the austere expressions? The answer is tangled in faith. To the Rapa Nui, these were not idols to be worshipped, but vessels, hollow bodies into which the spirits of great ancestors could flow. The larger the statue, the greater the mana, the spiritual power it could hold. And so size became not just artistry, but prestige, proof of a clan's strength, a chief's command. Imagine the clan leaders standing together at Reino Raraku, their eyes measuring the colossal forms. Rivalries spark silently, not yet spoken but clear as firelight in their gaze. One chieftain points at a statue taller than the others, and his people nod with pride. Another, not to be outdone, whispers orders to begin an even larger one. The mountain listens, and yields piece after piece of its body to the ambitions of men. Now let us follow the workers as they carve. The tools are stone adzes, their edges sharpened again and again against smaller rocks. Sparks sometimes fly when basalt strikes basalt, a fleeting reminder of the fire that birthed this mountain. Hands are blistered, muscles ache, but the rhythm continues, tap, scrape, until the slope is filled with the groans of stone giving way. Dust clings to skin, to hair, to every wrinkle of clothing, until the men look half like statues themselves. And then comes the moment of separation. After years of labor, a colossal form lies finished on the quarry slope, its body cut free from the mountain except for a thin keel of rock along its spine. With careful wedges and leverage, the workers break that last connection, and the moai settles, heavy and complete, onto the earth. The sound is not a crash but a deep, resonant thud, like the heartbeat of the island itself. The statue does not rise yet. It lies face up or face down on the slope, waiting. For days, chants are sung around it, gifts of food and flowers are laid nearby. The people treat it as both object and ancestor, both crafted and eternal. They believe its spirit already listens, already watches, even before it stands. Children are hushed when they pass, their parents reminding them to show respect. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the island, the sacred platforms, the ahu, are being built, long stone foundations fitted together with a mason's precision. These are altars, not graves, though some bones of chiefs may be interred beneath. They are the stages upon which the ancestors will stand to gaze inward over their clans, forever protecting the people who carved them. Imagine the work, boulders rolled, fitted, smoothed, until the ahu stretches like a tongue of stone toward the sea. Night falls at the quarry. Fires flicker, drums throb, and the air trembles with song. The people chant in unison, a slow, rising rhythm that seems to make the statues shiver in the firelight. The faces, though silent, catch the glow, their lips turning red as if blood warmed them again. For the first time, you begin to understand how stone could be seen as alive. This is not art. This is resurrection. The statue lies silent still, heavy on the slope of Reino Raraku, but the people no longer see only rock. They see a presence. A vessel. A bridge between the breathing and the dead. The Moai are not mere monuments. They are the ancestors themselves, given new bodies in stone. Imagine the first time a clan gathers before one of these giants, newly raised upon its ahu. The air smells of crushed grass and smoke from torches. The sea hammers in the distance, steady as a drumbeat. Men and women sit cross-legged on the ground, children pressed close against their mothers. Their eyes tilt upward to the looming figure above. Though carved with simple lines, the Moai's expression is stern, eternal, impossible to mistake. In that silence, people feel the weight of generations watching them. You close your eyes and hear the chants begin, low, rhythmic, circling the air like the tide. Each voice is a strand, woven into a rope that binds the living to the dead. They call on names, Hotumatue, the first king, and all who followed him, chiefs whose bones lie beneath the platforms, warriors, navigators, and priests who shaped the island's fate. Each Moai is not just one ancestor, but the distilled spirit of many. When dawn breaks, the statue's shadow stretches inland, across gardens, homes, paths worn by bare feet. The Moai do not face the sea. They turn inward, their stony gaze fixed on the people, as if to guard and guide. To live under their eyes is to live under expectation. Every crop planted, every quarrel settled, every child born, all are done beneath the watch of those who came before. Imagine waking each morning and seeing your grandfather's gaze, 20 feet tall, looking down on you. Imagine never escaping it, not in work, not in rest, not even in your dreams. And yet, the people draw comfort from this surveillance. The Moai embody mana, the sacred energy that flows through chiefs and through the bloodline itself. A great Moai means a strong clan, a protector whose invisible hand steers fortune toward fertile fields, full nets, victory in disputes. The island is too small for armies, too remote for trade empires, but prestige, the respect of neighbors, the honor of lineage, this is currency. And Moai are its coins, enormous and unspendable, but powerful all the same. Picture the ceremonies. A new statue, freshly raised, is awakened by placing eyes of white coral and red scoria into its sockets. The moment is electric. Drums thunder, conch shells bellow, priests sway in trance, and the people cry out as if the stone has truly drawn breath. For the first time, the Moai sees them. And once it sees, it can never unsee. Its presence becomes eternal, its judgment inescapable. Children are taught to bow when passing, to whisper greetings, to offer flowers or food at its base. To neglect such respect would be to invite misfortune, The ancestors, now embodied, are not abstract. They are daily company. They stand on Ahu overlooking villages, their backs to the sea, their eyes commanding every movement. They guard crops from failure, protect warriors from harm, and ensure rains fall when needed. If calamity comes, a storm that ruins gardens, a sickness that spreads, people wonder, have we failed the ancestors? Was a ritual missed, a Moai dishonored? The statues are both shield and mirror, reflecting the people's faith back upon their lives. Let us walk along the coast together. The air is bright with salt, the gulls circling. Before us stand rows of Moai on their platforms, some capped with red pucao, cylindrical topknots carved from scoria, their color like frozen fire. These hats mark high status, echoing the hairstyles of the chiefs who once walked the island in flesh. To see them from a distance is to glimpse a silent council, a line of ancestral judges whose gaze binds clan to clan in both rivalry and awe. But symbols can cut both ways. The larger the statue, the greater the mana, and so ambition grows. A clan that raises a giant commands respect, but another clan, stung by envy, seeks to outdo it. Thus, competition sharpens faith. What begins as devotion to the ancestors also becomes a contest among the living. The quarry at Reino Ruraka swells with projects, each Moai larger than the last, each one a gamble with labor and resources. In the stillness of their stone faces lies not just reverence but rivalry. At night, in the glow of firelight, elders tell stories of how the ancestors themselves walk in the dark. Legends whisper that the Moai move with breath, that they stride across the island by command of priestly chants. You imagine it, the ground trembling as a giant of stone steps slowly, its eyes glowing, its presence undeniable. The truth may be ropes and rollers, sweat and muscle, but the people prefer the legend. To them, it is not fantasy but proof of the ancestors' power. After all, how else could such impossibilities stand upon these small shores? And so the Moai become more than statues. They are memory cast in stone, prestige frozen into cliffs, faith heavy enough to bend backs and reshape the land. They are symbols of continuity, proof that the dead do not vanish but remain watching. The people carve, transport, and raise them not only for honor but for reassurance, that they are not alone, that their ancestors' strength lives on, that every hardship is witnessed and every triumph celebrated. But symbols are demanding masters. Each new Moai requires more labor, more stone, more trees felled to move them. Each demands greater ceremonies, more food offered, more songs sung. The ancestors' gaze is unyielding, their appetite endless. What began as devotion deepens into burden. And beneath the calm faces of the statues, cracks of strain begin to appear, not in the stone, but in the society that serves them. Still, for now, the island hums with faith. You walk among the people and feel the presence of the Moai everywhere, in the way hands clasp in prayer before planting, in the hush that falls when children pass beneath their shadows, in the fierce pride with which clans boast of their giants. They are not just symbols of the ancestors. They are the ancestors. And to live on Rapa Nui is to live forever in their gaze. The statues watch, but they do not stand alone. Beneath every towering Moai lies the ground reshaped by human hands, a foundation of sacred stones known as the Ahu. Without the Ahu, the Moai would have no throne, no altar, no link to the bones of the ancestors buried beneath. And so, just as much as the statues themselves, these platforms are the heartbeat of Rapa Nui's devotion, the physical stage upon which memory, power, and faith converge. Walk with me now along the coastline, where the roar of the sea pounds ceaselessly against black volcanic cliffs. The spray leaps high, the air smells of salt and kelp, and just above the line of the waves you see them, terraces of stone stretching out like tongues into the ocean. Each Ahu is a masterpiece of patience and balance. The builders gather boulders from fields and quarries, their backs bent under the weight, their feet steady on uneven ground. The stones are chosen with care, some massive, some small, each fitted so precisely that centuries later they still rest in silent defiance of wind and wave. Imagine the process. First, the site must be chosen. Not every stretch of coast is worthy. The priests read the land like scripture, watching how the sun rises and sets, how the waves break, how shadows fall at equinox and solstice. An ahu is not placed at random. It is aligned with the rhythms of sky and sea, a compass of both the physical and the spiritual world. The people believe the ancestors' spirits travel between ocean and land, between living and dead, and so the ahu becomes the gateway. The work begins with clearing the ground. Grass is stripped, soil leveled. Men dig deep, laying down a base of heavy boulders that will anchor the platform against centuries of storms. Above these, smaller stones are fitted with astonishing precision, each one tested, shifted, tapped into place until the entire structure hums with stability. You can almost hear the ring of stone against stone, the shouted orders, the grunts of effort as shoulders press against levers of wood. The ahu grows slowly, like a wall built not just of rock but of determination. At the rear of the platform, sacred spaces are prepared. Here, the bones of chiefs and revered ancestors are laid to rest, wrapped carefully in mats of fiber, sealed within chambers of stone. To stand before the moai, raised atop the ahu, is to stand not only in the presence of a statue but above the very remains of those it represents. Life and death fuse here, the physical body below, the stone body above, with the living gathered in between. Now imagine the day when the platform is complete, ready to receive its giant guardian. The moai, dragged from the quarry across plains and slopes, is finally raised into position, its massive weight settling onto the ahu with a shudder that seems to shake the earth itself. Around it, the people gather in ceremony. Drums pound, conch shells wail, and the priests chant invocations that rise into the sky. Women bring offerings of food, children scatter flowers, warriors stand proudly with spears gleaming in firelight. And when the final act comes, when coral eyes are placed into sockets, and the moai's gaze comes alive, the ahu transforms from stonework into sanctuary. Picture the scene at dawn. The sky blushes with the first light, and the moai's long shadow stretches across fields where crops grow. Villagers emerge from their huts, pausing to bow, to murmur greetings, to feel the silent protection of the ancestor. The ahu is not just a monument, it is the axis of daily life. Marriages are blessed before it, victories celebrated, disputes judged. Offerings are left at its base, fruits, fish, flowers, each one a small thread in the endless dialogue between living and dead. But ahu are also theaters of prestige. Each clan builds its own, each seeking to outshine the others. Some raise a single moai, modest in scale but rich in ceremony. Others construct great terraces stretching tens of meters, topped with rows of statues like councils of giants. Along the southern coast lies Tongariki, where 15 moai once stood in a line, their backs to the sea, their eyes commanding the land. Imagine approaching it across the plain, 15 faces staring, unblinking, the weight of generations multiplied. To stand there is to feel yourself small, almost transparent, before the will of the ancestors. Yet grandeur comes at cost. The building of ahu requires immense resources, stone quarried, trees felled, food prepared to feed workers. Each project drains the island's veins a little more. Still, the clans press on, for to leave one's ancestors without proper honor is unthinkable. Better to exhaust the land than allow shame to stain the lineage. The symbolism deepens with every stone. The ahu faces inward, binding the living to the land, but its rear touches the sea, the vast unknown from which life once came. It is both bridge and boundary. At festivals, the people gather along its steps, singing to the ancestors while waves crash behind them. The ocean's endless roar and the people's chants weave together, until it seems the whole island is caught between two worlds, land and sea, life and death, past and present. Come closer to the stones. Run your hand along their surface. Feel how smooth some are, worn by centuries of wind, while others still hold the raw edges of the quarry. Each was lifted, dragged, placed with care, a fingerprint of labor left upon it. Kneel, and you may see where moss now clings, green veins creeping across gray. Listen closely, and you may almost hear the echo of voices that once ordered, pleaded, celebrated. And so the Ahu endure. Not merely platforms of stone, but sanctuaries of memory, theaters of power, altars of faith. To walk among them is to walk among the ancestors themselves, to feel the hum of man arising from bones below and stone above. For centuries, they defined the rhythm of life on Rapa Nui, markers of territory, symbols of clan pride, and sacred stages upon which the greatest drama of survival was played out. Yet beneath the surface of reverence lies tension. The larger the Ahu, the greater the strain on resources. The more statues raised, the fiercer the competition. The island itself begins to whisper warnings in the crack of felled trees, in the thinning soil, in the hunger that grows when ceremonies demand more than fields can yield. Still, the building continues, because stopping would mean dishonor, and dishonor is worse than hunger. The Moai stand tall, the Ahu strong, the ancestors ever watchful. But in the shadow of their grandeur, the seeds of struggle begin to take root. The Ahu are set, the ceremonies sung, and the ancestors stand once more in their stone bodies. Yet something stirs in the hearts of the people. Reverence alone is not enough. Prestige whispers like a restless spirit, urging each clan to prove its strength, to show that its mana burns brighter, stronger, heavier than the rest. And so, the Moai begin to grow. What once were statues of a few meters soon stretch taller, broader, more massive. The island becomes a workshop of ambition, its quarries echoing with the unceasing scrape of tools, the thud of stone on stone, the grunt of laborers straining under impossible weight. To carve a Moai is to honor the ancestors. To carve a colossal Moai is to proclaim that one's ancestors, and by extension one's clan, tower above all others. Imagine standing at Reino Raraka during this fever of creation. The slope is alive with figures in every stage of birth, some only faint outlines, their faces just emerging from the rock like dreamers stirring in sleep, others fully carved, lying prone as though waiting to rise. Dust clouds shimmer in the sun, sweat streaks the backs of carvers, chants rise to keep rhythm with the blows of their adzes. The air vibrates with ambition. You walk among them and feel dwarfed. Here lies a statue 10 meters long, its nose sharp, its chin proud. There, another nearly 15 meters, its body half buried in the slope, its immensity so great that one wonders whether it was ever meant to move at all. The largest of all, the so-called El Gigante, reaches 21 meters in length, unfinished but still awe-inspiring, a mountain of stone in the shape of a man. Even incomplete, it radiates defiance, as if daring future generations to question the will of those who began it. The scale is not mere excess. It is politics, religion, and rivalry carved into rock. Each new Moai must outshine the last, each clan pushing beyond what seems possible. Chiefs measure their greatness not only by the abundance of their fields or the loyalty of their people, but by the shadow their ancestors cast across the land. To build small is to admit weakness. To build colossal is to command respect, to force all eyes to look upward. But with size comes danger. The effort required to move such giants grows staggering. Imagine the ropes, thick with twisted fibers, biting into hands. Imagine the wooden rollers, groaning under weight that threatens to crush them to splinters. Imagine dozens of men straining together, their muscles trembling, their voices hoarse from shouting in unison. Each step forward is a gamble. One slip, one snapped rope, and the statue topples, shattering years of labor in an instant. And yet they persist, because the risk itself becomes part of the glory. To attempt what others fear is to prove supremacy. When a colossal Moai finally stands upon its Ahu, the pride of the clan is boundless. Songs are composed in its honor, feasts held at its feet. Children are told that their ancestors' power is unmatched. that their future is secured by stone that pierces the sky. Step back with me and watch as one of these giants is raised. The ahu is ready, the platform strong. The statue, dragged across kilometers of earth, lies at its base. Now begins the final, most perilous task, to bring it upright. Ropes are fastened, levers wedged, chants rise to steady the hearts of the workers. Slowly, agonizingly, the moai tilts upward. The ropes groan, the ground shakes, sweat drips into the soil. For a breathless moment, it seems the statue will fall back and shatter. But then, with a thunderous thud, it locks into place. Dust rises, people cheer, drums pound. A colossal ancestor now towers above them, its gaze commanding every path, every hut, every field. The island changes under their shadow. Villages align themselves with the sidelines of Moai, fields are planted within their gaze, rituals timed to their presence. The people believe that the greater the statue, the greater the blessings, rains will come, crops will thrive, fish will leap into nets. But faith is not without cost. Each larger moai demands more trees felled, more stone quarried, more hands devoted to labor instead of farming. The balance between reverence and survival grows thinner, more fragile. Still, the pursuit of scale continues, because scale itself has become sacred. To stop building larger moai would be to admit that one's ancestors have no more power to give, that one's clan has fallen behind. Pride will not allow it. The quarries roar with effort, the ahu strain under weight, and the island bends under the ambition of its people. Picture the coastline now. Once dotted with modest statues, it bristles with giants, their faces severe, their silhouettes immense against the sky. To sail near Rapa Nui and glimpse them from the sea must have been to feel awe and fear all at once, an island of stone guardians staring not outward to the ocean, but inward, forever watching their descendants. And yet, beneath the triumph, unease stirs. The forests grow thinner, the soil begins to tire, the people labor harder for diminishing returns. But they do not stop. They cannot. For to stop would be to dishonor the ancestors, to betray the very faith that binds them. And so, the moai grow larger, even as the island itself grows weary. The colossal scale is both glory and burden, triumph and warning. The people of Rapa Nui have carved their pride into stone, taller and heavier than any who came before. But with each giant raised, the question deepens: how long can the island bear the weight of its own ambition? The moai stand upon their platforms, colossal and unblinking, but before they reached the ahu they had to travel. And here, perhaps more than anywhere else, the story of Rapa Nui bends into mystery. For how does one move a statue that weighs as much as a herd of elephants? How does stone, heavy as silence, cross kilometers of uneven ground, over hills, through valleys, without splintering into ruin? The islanders themselves offered an answer, long after the statues had fallen. They said simply, the moai walked. Picture the scene. Night, lit only by fire and stars. A circle of priests stands at the base of a newly carved statue, its body still dusted with the quarry's tuff. They chant, their voices weaving spells into the air, while the clans gather in tense anticipation. A shout rises, ropes are pulled, and the giant begins to sway. Step by step, rocking from side to side, the moai seems alive. To the people watching, it is not men dragging stone, it is the ancestors themselves striding to their new home. Faith makes the impossible seem natural. Yet faith alone cannot explain the grooves worn into the island's paths, the broken statues scattered like fallen soldiers across the landscape. Archaeologists have studied these scars and offered theories. One suggests that wooden sledges, heavy and groaning, carried the statues over logs laid as rollers. The sound would have been immense, wood cracking, stone grinding, men shouting to keep pace. But to build such sledges requires trees, and as the centuries passed, the forests dwindled. Could this method have endured? Another theory imagines ropes, strong and fibrous, looped around the statues' heads and shoulders. With teams pulling alternately on each side, the Moai could be rocked forward in a slow dance, left, right, like a drunk but determined traveler. Modern experiments have tried this, and the statues, astonishingly, do move. Step by step, they shuffle upright, their wide bellies swaying, their heavy bases sliding across the ground. To see it happen is to glimpse legend made flesh, to realize that perhaps the islanders' stories were not exaggeration but memory. Imagine being there, rope in hand, sweat blinding your eyes. Your feet dig into soil, your back arches, your hands burn as fibers bite into your skin. With a heave and a shout, the Moai tips forward half a step. Dust sprays upward. The crowd roars. Then again, heave, sway, step. The statue lurches like a giant relearning how to walk, and in that moment you understand why the people said it was alive. For it moves not like a dragged corpse, but like something with its own rhythm, its own will. Still, not every attempt succeeded. All across the island lie statues fallen on their journey, their massive bodies cracked where they struck the earth. Some lie face down, noses shattered, as if silenced mid-stride. Others lie on their backs, staring forever at the sky, abandoned when ropes snapped or strength failed. These broken Moai are not forgotten, they are mourned. Each one represents years of labor, prayers unanswered, manna left unfulfilled. Families wept over them as if over a lost elder, for in truth, that is what they were meant to be. The paths themselves bear witness. Worn depressions mark where logs once rolled, grooves etched deep by ropes pulled taut. Imagine the sound of it, the squeal of fibers, the thump of rollers, the scrape of stone against stone. The land remembers, even if words cannot. And always, surrounding the work, ceremony. Moving a Moai is not just an engineering feat, it is a sacred procession. Chants rise to steady the rhythm, drums pound like the heartbeat of the island. Women bring food to feed the laborers, children carry water gourds to quench parched throats. The whole community joins, for this is not labor for one man or even one clan, but for generations past and future. Every step forward is a prayer answered, every stumble a warning from the ancestors. Think, too, of the night marches. Some say the statues were moved under moonlight, when air was cooler and spirits stronger. Picture torches flickering in long lines, their glow painting the stone face in gold. Shadows leap across fields, ropes creak, voices echo against cliffs. From a distance, it must have looked like giants indeed walked the land, glowing with fire, striding to claim their watch. But the mystery endures. Which method was true? Was it sledges dragged over logs? Was it rocking with ropes? Was it something else, a technique lost with the last of the island's great carvers? Perhaps the answer is not one, but many, different clans, different times, different means, all wrapped into the single legend, the Moai walked. And maybe that is enough. For in the end, the truth of the movement is not only mechanical. It is spiritual. What mattered was not how stone crossed the earth, but that it did, and that the people believed it was the ancestors themselves who chose to rise and walk among them. So as you stand on a windswept plain, watching a Moai sway into place, feel the mingling of sweat and faith, of rope and prayer. The mystery is not solved by equations or experiments alone. It lives in the eyes of the people who watch giants walk across their island, and in the silence of the statues that still stand, as if waiting for their next command. The statues walk, at least that is how the people remember it. Step by step, sway by sway, the Moai cross the island until they stand upon their platforms, their eyes turned inward to guard the living. But once they are raised, once the chants fade and the dust settles, another force begins to stir, subtle at first, then burning like fire beneath ash. The Moai are not only guardians. They are trophies. They are proof. And with proof comes rivalry. On this small island, hemmed by ocean on every side, prestige becomes as vital as food, as urgent as water. To honor the ancestors is holy. but to honor them more magnificently than one's rivals is power. A clan that raises a larger Moai, that builds a grander Ahu, that marshals more laborers, shows the world it commands greater mana. And mana is not only spiritual. It is political, tangible, binding hearts and bending knees. Walk with me to the plain before Ahu Tangariki. 15 Moai once stood here, a council of giants watching over the land. Imagine the awe of approaching this place centuries ago, when every statue gleamed with fresh stone, their coral eyes shining, their red scoria topknots blazing under the sun. To stand here was to feel the weight of a clan's supremacy pressing down like a second sky. No neighboring chief could deny such grandeur. Now imagine another clan, miles away, gazing upon this spectacle with envy curdling in their stomachs. Their own platform, their own statues, seem suddenly smaller, humbler, insufficient. They gather their carvers, their priests, their people, and whisper, "We will build taller. We will carve heavier. We will show the island whose ancestors truly command the greatest mana." And so the cycle spins, each Moai answered by another, each platform matched or exceeded, ambition rising like surf against cliffs. The quarries roar with labor. At Reino Raraku, men chip and scrape until their hands bleed, dust turning their skin gray. Statues half-finished lie abandoned, victims of cracks or exhaustion, but others grow taller, broader, ever more impossible. The ground itself seems to groan under the weight of ambition. Prestige is not measured only in size. It is measured in spectacle. When a new Moai is moved, the entire island watches. Clans send envoys to witness the procession, to measure strength by the number of ropes pulled, the size of the feasts provided, the fervor of the chants. Imagine the pride of a chief standing before his people, pointing to a statue that dwarfs all others, declaring that his ancestors' gaze is the strongest. In that moment, prestige becomes power, power to command loyalty, to secure marriages, to negotiate alliances, even to intimidate rivals. But prestige is fragile. To fail in moving a Moai, to leave it broken on the path, is shame that stains a clan for generations. To raise a statue smaller than one's neighbors is humiliation. And so the stakes rise higher, the risks grow greater, until ambition itself becomes a burden heavier than the stone it commands. The ceremonies mirror this escalation. A small Moai may receive humble offerings, but a colossal one demands feasts that drain stores of food, that consume weeks of preparation. Chickens are slaughtered, gardens emptied, nets cast again and again to bring fish enough for hundreds. The air at such ceremonies is thick with roasting meat, with chants and drums, with laughter and boasting. But beneath the joy lies tension. Every gift given to the ancestors is also a display before rivals. Every dance, every chant, is measured not only by spirits, but by human eyes. Children grow up under these shadows, their identities bound to the size of their clan statues. They learn early that the ancestors' strength is reflected in stone, that their own worth is tied to the height of the Moai that guards them. Pride becomes inheritance, and with it the endless pressure to surpass the past. Step back with me, and look at the island from above. A triangle of volcanic slopes, its coasts lined with platforms, each one a declaration of power. The Moai do not face the sea, as if to warn outsiders. They face inward, toward one another, toward the people who live beneath them. It is as though the island itself is a chessboard, each statue a piece in a game of prestige played not with words or swords but with stone. And yet, the game has consequences. To carve larger statues requires more laborers, more tools, more food to sustain the workers. To move them demands more ropes, more logs, more fields cleared for pathways. Every escalation drains the land further, taxes the people more harshly. But to stop would be to fall behind, to let rivals claim superiority. Pride will not permit it. The Moai, then, are both guardians and weapons, silent, immovable, yet powerful in their influence. Each one raised is a victory, each one toppled a humiliation. Chiefs wield them as symbols sharper than spears, heavier than clubs. A colossal Moai can command more loyalty than 100 warriors, for it is not only stone but faith, not only prestige but proof. Still, the ancestors are not blind to vanity. Some say that when clans grew too proud, when they built more for rivalry than for reverence, disasters followed. Crops failed, storms struck, sickness spread. The people whispered that the ancestors were displeased, that mana had soured into curse. Yet the chiefs pressed on, blinded by the need to surpass one another, unable to loosen the grip of pride. And so, the island entered an age of grandeur and strain, where every horizon bristled with Moai, where every clan sought to outdo the last. The statues stood taller, the ahu grew longer, the ceremonies more elaborate. From afar, Rapa Nui must have seemed a place of glory, its shores guarded by giants, its people blessed by ancestors. But within, the seeds of conflict and collapse were already being sown, hidden beneath the very prestige that gave the island its splendor. The statues stand taller than ever, their shadows stretching long across the land, their gaze heavy with pride and faith. The clans celebrate their triumphs with chants, feasts, and boasting. But beneath the rhythm of drums and the shimmer of firelight, something quieter begins to stir. It is not the voice of ancestors this time, nor the whisper of rivalry. It is the land itself, sighing with exhaustion. For every moai carved, a tree has fallen. For every platform raised, stones have been hauled across fields once lush with palms. For every feast, chickens have been slaughtered, fish nets cast more desperately, gardens emptied faster than the earth can renew them. Prestige, so intoxicating, has a cost written not in pride but in soil, wood, and water. And slowly, the island begins to feel the strain. Walk with me to the slopes of Reino Kau. The crater still holds its lake, fringed with reeds that whisper in the wind. But outside its rim, the land grows barer. Once, forests of towering palms covered much of the island, their fronds rustling like green banners in the sky. Birds nested in their heights, and their trunks gave wood for canoes, houses, rollers for the moai. Now, those forests are thinning. Men swing stone adzes into trunks, the sharp crack echoing like a warning. One by one, the palms topple, their roots tearing from the soil with a groan. Fires consume their husks, leaving behind fields cleared for planting, or barren scars where nothing grows again. Imagine the change this brings. With fewer trees, canoes become harder to build. Fishing voyages shrink from long journeys across open water to timid trips near shore. The bounty of the sea, once generous, grows scarce. Nets cast in shallow bays return with fewer fish. Baskets once filled with seabird eggs now lighter, the colonies dwindling as forests vanish. Families stare at meals thinner than before, children pick at taro roots smaller, drier, less nourishing. Hunger begins to gnaw. The soil, too, tires. Gardens that once yielded sweet potatoes, bananas, and yams now demand more effort. Without trees to hold it, rain washes soil down slopes, leaving behind rock and dust. Farmers try to protect their fields with stone circles, manavai, to trap heat and moisture, but even these clever walls cannot stop the exhaustion forever. Each harvest feels a little meaner than the last. And yet, the statues grow larger still. Clans, blinded by rivalry, push harder, demanding more labor, more food to sustain workers, more wood for rollers and ropes. Every project bleeds the land a little more. The people whisper that perhaps the ancestors demand too much, that their gaze has grown stern, unforgiving. But to stop building would mean dishonor, weakness, humiliation before rivals. Pride drowns out caution. Listen to the silence of birds. Where once thousands circled the skies, their cries filling dawn with a living chorus, now the air is thinner, emptier. Seabirds that nested in cliffs and forests vanish as their homes are destroyed. Children climb trees for eggs only to find none, their laughter turning to frowns, their mothers sighing as baskets remain empty. The island's skies, once alive with wings, grow still. And with the birds and fish fading, hunger deepens. Imagine sitting at a family meal, a thin stew of sweet potato, watery and bland, shared among many. Chickens, once plentiful, are now guarded carefully, their eggs hoarded, their bodies too precious to slaughter often. The feasts at Moai ceremonies grow harder to provide. Still they are held, because to abandon them would invite shame. But each feast drains reserves, leaving less for ordinary days. The people adapt as best they can. They build rock gardens, piling stones across fields to trap dew, to shield fragile plants from wind. They dig deeper for water, crawling into caves where fresh water seeps near the sea. They stretch every resource, every invention. But adaptation cannot match depletion. Slowly, year by year, the balance tips further. And with scarcity comes tension. Clans eye one another's fields, suspicious of theft, jealous of gardens that seem greener. Disputes over resources grow sharper, harder to settle. The Moai, once symbols of protection, now loom as silent reminders of promises unkept, guardians who watch hunger spread but offer no relief. Faith trembles under the weight of empty stomachs. Picture a night when a family gathers in their hut. The fire flickers weakly, for wood is scarce. Smoke stings the eyes, but warmth is precious. A child asks why the ancestors, so tall and strong in stone, do not bring more fish, more fruit. The parents have no answer. They glance at the silhouette of the Moai outside, its face lit dimly by starlight, and they wonder, silently, if the ancestors are displeased, or if stone was never enough to feed flesh. Still, the work at the quarries does not stop. Men continue to carve, their adzes ringing against tough, their backs aching, their bellies often empty. Statues lie abandoned not only from accidents now, but from lack of strength to finish them. The slopes of Reino Raraka become littered with giants half-born, their bodies stretched across the earth like fallen dreams. Each one a monument not to triumph, but to the limits of ambition. The decline of resources is not sudden. It creeps, patient as tide, inevitable as erosion. A little less wood each year. A little less fish. A little more hunger. A little more envy. Until one day, the island no longer remembers abundance, only struggle. And so, as the Moai grow ever larger, the island itself grows smaller in spirit, its resources thinned, its forests gone, its seas less generous. The ancestors still stand, but their gaze feels colder, harder, as if they judge rather than protect. And beneath their shadows, the people begin to quarrel. For when survival falters, unity fractures. The land grows thin, the forests vanish, and the seas give less each season. Hunger gnaws not only at bellies but at faith. Once, the ancestors' gaze brought comfort. Now, their towering presence feels like reproach. The Moai stand taller than ever, yet their shadows stretch over fields that yield little, over children who cry at night for food. And when reverence falters, suspicion grows. If our crops fail while theirs prosper, is it because their chiefs hold greater manna, or because they steal what should be ours? If our nets come back empty while their baskets are full, is it the sea's whim, or their priests' trickery? Such questions are sparks, and sparks need only a breath of wind to become flame. The island is too small for endless peace. Clans that once competed only in stone now begin to clash in flesh. Disputes over gardens turn to skirmishes. Arguments over fishing grounds swell into bloodshed. The great statues that once embodied protection now stand over battlegrounds. Their silent faces watching can raise spears against kin. Imagine the first toppling. It is not an accident, not a storm's whim, but a deliberate act. One night, under the cover of darkness, warriors creep toward a rival Ahu. They carry ropes and levers, not for building but for undoing. The air is sharp with salt and fear. Torches flicker low, muffled to hide their glow. With grunts and heaves, they tug at ropes looped around the statue's head. Slowly, horribly, the Moai begins to tilt. Its stone body groans against the platform. then crashes forward with a thunder that shakes the ground. Dust explodes into the air, cries rise, and when morning comes the village wakes to find their ancestor face down in the dirt, nose shattered, eyes broken. Humiliation deeper than death has been delivered. For to topple a Moai is not just to destroy stone. It is to sever the ancestor's gaze, to strip a clan of its mana, to declare their spirits powerless. It is war not only against the living but against the dead. No insult cuts deeper. No vengeance burns hotter. The practice spreads. Each clan, desperate to weaken its rivals, begins targeting statues. Once proud platforms lie in ruin, their guardians toppled, their eyes forever blinded. Fields echo with the crash of stone on stone, the air with the shouts of warriors and the wails of women. Where once the island's coast was a crown of watchful giants, it becomes instead a graveyard of fallen faces. Battles themselves are brutal but swift. Spears tipped with obsidian slice the air, their edges sharper than any metal. Clubs carved from hardwood slam into bone with sickening thuds. Warriors paint their bodies with red and white, chanting to summon courage, their cries wild under the beating sun. Clashes erupt in gardens, on cliffs, in the very shadow of Moai. Blood stains the earth, and when it dries, the ancestors stand mute, their stone lips sealed against pleas. The wars are not grand campaigns. They are raids, ambushes, sudden strikes under moonlight. A garden burned, a storehouse looted, a family captured. But their toll is relentless. Hunger deepens as resources are destroyed not by nature but by men. The cycle feeds itself, scarcity drives war, and war worsens scarcity. And always the statues fall. One after another, toppled in vengeance, in spite, in desperate proof of dominance. Soon few remain standing. The island that once boasted a horizon bristling with guardians becomes instead a place of broken colossi, their bodies sprawled across fields and slopes. To walk among them is to walk through silence heavier than any chant, a silence filled with accusation. Imagine a child growing up in this time. He no longer sees Moai as protectors, but as ruins. He hears his elders speak of when the ancestors watched proudly from their ahu, but he knows only the sight of fallen faces, noses buried in dust. Faith turns brittle, history cracks like the statues themselves. The link between living and dead, once so carefully carved, fractures under the weight of war. Yet still, the people endure. Even in conflict, they cling to rituals, to songs, to fragments of belief. Some turn to new traditions, the Birdman cult at Orongo, where competition shifts from stone to flesh, from Moai to daring feats on cliffs and ocean waves. Others continue to whisper prayers to toppled statues, laying offerings at broken heads, hoping that even fallen ancestors might still listen. But the wars have done their work. The island is divided, its resources strained to breaking, its faith wounded. When Europeans arrive, centuries later, they will see only ruins and wonder how such a society could have collapsed. They will not hear the echoes of chants silenced by spears, or smell the acrid smoke of burned gardens, or feel the tremor of Moai crashing down in the night. They will not know that war, born of scarcity, carved its own scars into Rapa Nui, as lasting as any statue. The clans fought not only for survival, but for pride, for mana, for the right to say that their ancestors still ruled. And in doing so, they toppled the very guardians that once bound them together. The wars leave the island scarred. Moai lie scattered across fields like fallen warriors, their faces broken against the earth. Villages smolder, gardens shrink, and hunger gnaws more fiercely than ever. The people whisper to ancestors whose stone eyes no longer watch them, and silence answers. Yet life goes on, stubborn and small, fires lit at dawn, nets cast into the sea, children stillborn under the shadow of ruins. And then, one day, something new appears on the horizon. Not clouds, not seabirds, not the familiar curve of the sun rising from the Pacific. Sails. Imagine the shock. For centuries, The people of Rapa Nui have known only their island, their sea, their sky. The horizon is endless, an unbroken ring of blue. And then suddenly, shapes emerge, white and swollen like the wings of giant seabirds, but rigid, moving against the wind in ways no canoe ever could. The cry goes up across the villages, strangers have come. It is Easter Sunday, 1722, when Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen first steps onto Rapa Nui. His men, weary from months at sea, climb down into longboats and row toward the shore. Muskets glint in the sun, heavy boots splash in the surf. The islanders gather on the beach, wide-eyed, wary. They have seen nothing like this. Men pale as bone, dressed in cloth that gleams, carrying weapons that thunder with smoke. Some run forward in curiosity, others hang back in fear. Priests chant, chiefs raise hands in cautious greeting. The Dutch write later of the people they meet, lean, tattooed, wearing cloaks of woven fibers, their bodies painted with designs that swirl like the sea. They see toppled statues already, silent colossi lying broken in the grass. They marvel at the ahu, at the scale of the Moai, but they do not yet understand their meaning. To them, this is not sacred land, but curiosity, another mystery in a long voyage of discovery. For the islanders, the encounter is stranger still. They watch as Europeans unload barrels and muskets, as they eat strange foods, as they gesture wildly, their language harsh and clipped. The air fills with the smell of gunpowder, unfamiliar and terrifying. At first, there is wonder. Gifts are exchanged, chickens, bananas, ornaments. But mistrust soon follows. A musket fires, smoke erupts, and people fall. The first meeting between Rapa Nui and Europe is not peace, but blood. After Roggeveen departs, silence returns, but the island is forever changed. Stories of pale-skinned strangers carrying thundersticks echo through huts at night. Children ask if they were spirits, ancestors returned in new form. Elders shake their heads uncertain. The ancestors never wore iron. The ancestors never killed with fire. Decades later, sails return. In 1770, the Spanish arrive, claiming the island for their crown. They sign documents with chiefs who do not understand the marks they make. In 1774, Captain James Cook anchors offshore. His men describe an island both magnificent and wounded, fields of sweet potatoes, but few trees, dozens of moai, but many already toppled. They see hunger in the people's faces, tension in their movements. They offer nails, beads, trinkets, marveling at how eagerly these are accepted. To the islanders, iron is treasure beyond imagining, harder than stone, sharper than bone. Each arrival brings more confusion, more disruption. The islanders, who once lived in a world bounded by their shores, now see that others exist, vast ships, foreign tongues, strange customs. Some believe these visitors are gods. Others see them as invaders. But all agree, their presence changes everything. Imagine the sight of a European ship at anchor. Its masts tower higher than any palm, its sails billow like cliffs of white. The creak of ropes, the slap of waves against its hull, the strange music of bells and shouted orders, none of it belongs to Rapa Nui. Islanders paddle out in fragile canoes, dwarfed by the massive wooden beast, their eyes wide as they peer over the gunwales at cannons lined like sleeping giants. The ship smells of tar, of sweat, of salted meat. Rats scurry in its shadows, parrots squawk in cages, and men with weathered faces peer down, some smiling, some sneering. Trade begins. Chickens and food are offered in exchange for cloth, for beads, for iron nails. The first axes of metal bite into wood with a strength stone never matched. The first hooks of iron pull fish from the sea with ease. For a moment, life seems enriched, as if the ancestors themselves have finally answered prayers with gifts carried over the waves. But these gifts come tangled in threads unseen. Dependence begins, and with it vulnerability. Not all encounters are violent. Some Europeans write of generosity, of laughter shared, of dances exchanged on beaches under the stars. But mistrust never sleeps. A stolen trinket, a misunderstood gesture, a shouted order, these ignite skirmishes. Muskets roar, and islanders fall before weapons they cannot match. The visitors sail away, leaving behind not only bodies and smoke but memory, bitter as salt. From that point on, the island is never free of watching the horizon. Children scan the sea, elders mutter prayers when clouds shift into sail-like shapes. The people know now that they are not alone, that strangers with power beyond imagining can appear at any moment, demanding, taking, leaving. And as the 18th century turns into the 19th, the visits grow more frequent. Whalers anchor offshore, their crews row ashore for food, water, and women. Traders arrive, eyeing the island not as mystery but as resource. Missionaries step onto its soil, Bibles in hand, eager to replace chants with hymns, to replace Moai with crosses. Each wave erodes the old ways a little more. The arrival of Europeans is not a single event but a tide. It comes in swells: Dutch, Spanish, English, whalers, slavers, missionaries, each one washing away fragments of the old world. The people of Rapa Nui, already strained by hunger and war, now face forces larger than anything they have ever known. Their ancestors, carved in stone, stand silent against the horizon, but even their gaze cannot stop sails from appearing. The sails have come, and with them strangers who leave their shadows across the island. At first they bring trinkets, iron, muskets, and stories of far-off lands. But in their wake follows something unseen, something more dangerous than steel or powder. It arrives quietly, carried in breath, in touch, in cloth. It is disease, a plague against which the people of Rapa Nui have no shield. Imagine the first fevers. A man shivers in the night though the air is warm. His skin burns with heat, his chest rattles as he coughs. His family gathers, worried, offering herbs, chanting prayers to ancestors. But the fever spreads. His children cough, his wife weakens, neighbors stumble with the same sickness. The huts fill with the sound of labored breathing, of whispered prayers turning to cries of grief. The island has endured hunger, war, storms, but never this. This enemy is invisible, unstoppable, leaving behind not toppled statues but empty homes. European ships do not stay long, but their visits are enough. Smallpox, influenza, tuberculosis, each disease rides the tide like a hidden invader. The islanders, unprepared, fall in staggering numbers. Villages shrink, ceremonies falter, chants fade into silence. Survivors stare at empty spaces around fires, at fields left untended, at Moai whose gaze seems colder, as if ancestors themselves had turned away. And as if disease were not enough, a darker tide follows. In the mid-19th century, slavers arrive. Ships from Peru cast anchor offshore, their crews armed and ruthless. They do not come to trade. They come to take. Picture the terror. Boats crash onto the beaches, men rush ashore with guns and clubs. Villagers scatter, children scream, mothers clutch their infants and run into the hills. But the raiders are relentless. They seize hundreds, men, women, even priests and chiefs, dragging them onto their ships. Shackled, beaten, bewildered, the islanders are forced below decks, crammed into suffocating holds. The air thickens with salt, sweat, and fear. The cries of the captured rise like a storm, then are drowned by the creak of timbers as the ships turn westward, carrying them away from their home forever. Those taken are carried to the mines and plantations of Peru, where they are worked to exhaustion, their language mocked, their faith ignored. Many die quickly, their bodies broken by labor and sickness. Others survive long enough to watch their children fade in lands where no Moai stand, where no chants call the ancestors' names. In a single raid, nearly half the population of Rapa Nui is stolen. The island reels, left with hollow huts, broken families, silence heavier than stone. When outrage in Peru forces some captives to be returned, the damage deepens still. For with them comes smallpox, burning through what fragile population remains. The disease kills indiscriminately chiefs, priests, elders, the bearers of memory. Oral histories, chants, genealogies, all are severed in a generation. Imagine the silence of that loss, when a culture that had lived for centuries in songs suddenly has no one left to sing. The missionaries arrive soon after, their Bibles open, their crosses raised. They see an island shattered by disease and slavery, and they offer salvation in exchange for conversion. Many accept, weary and broken, seeking comfort where the ancestors seem silent. The Moai, once the center of faith, are abandoned or mocked as idols. The platforms crumble, the chants fall quiet, the old ways are smothered under hymns. What once was pride, what once was rivalry, what once was survival, has become a struggle simply to endure. By the late 19th century, the population of Rapa Nui is reduced to a few hundred. From generations of builders, carvers, navigators, singers, dancers, priests, chiefs, only a remnant remains. Entire clans vanish, their names spoken no more. The island is scarred not only in body but in soul. And yet, even in this abyss, there is endurance. Survivors cling to fragments of memory. They whisper old chants in secret, teach their children words of the language, carry in their blood the manna of ancestors. The Moai lie toppled, broken, abandoned, but they are not forgotten. Even fallen, even silent, they remain the heartbeat of Rapa Nui. Imagine walking the island in this time. The once busy quarries are silent, overgrown with grass. Platforms stand empty, or their statues lie face down in the dirt. Villages are half deserted, huts collapsing. Children play in the shadows of ruins, too young to know that their laughter echoes where chants once rang. Elders stare at the horizon, not with hope, but with dread of sails returning. The ancestors' gaze seems gone, but still the island breathes, still its people survive, stubborn as weeds between stones. The plague and the slavers nearly erase them, but not completely. A spark endures. And from that spark, the story continues. The island is quiet now. Too quiet. Where once chants rose in the evenings, where drums once echoed across valleys, where feasts once smoked with abundance, there is only the whisper of wind through grass and the endless roar of the sea. The people of Rapa Nui have been thinned to a fraction of what they once were. Disease has stolen their strength, slavers their families, missionaries their old beliefs. And yet, walk with me among the toppled statues, through the quarries where unfinished giants still lie half-born in the rock, and you will feel it. A pulse beneath the silence. A hidden truth, buried in stone and soil, waiting to be heard. For the Moai were never just stone idols. They were not curiosities carved to amuse, nor art for its own sake. They were something deeper, more essential, lighthouses of spirit, anchors of faith, conduits between flesh and eternity. To understand them is to understand the very heart of the people who raised them. Think back to those first settlers who crossed the Pacific, guided by stars and memory. They carried with them their ancestors, not only in blood but in belief. The ancestors were living presences, unseen yet always near, their manna flowing like a hidden current through every crop, every voyage, every birth. To live without that presence was unthinkable. The Moai were the answer, a way to root the ancestors into the island itself, to give them bodies of stone as enduring as the cliffs, as watchful as the stars. Imagine standing before a freshly raised statue. Its face stern, its shadow long, its eyes shining with coral and obsidian. You do not see stone, you see your grandfather, your chief, your lineage watching over you. When you plant sweet potatoes, you know he sees. When you fish, you know he guides. When you falter, you know he judges. The Moai are not symbols. They are presences. They are the ancestors, given form again, guardians standing in silence yet alive in spirit. This is the hidden truth. The Moai were not built out of vanity, but out of devotion. Rivalry came later, when clans competed for size and scale. But at their core, these statues were love letters to the dead, monuments of memory, attempts to bind the fragile thread of human life to something that endures beyond time. Now bend closer. Run your hand along the stone. Feel how smooth the cheeks are, how precise the jawline, how carefully the features were carved. Every line carries a prayer, every groove a story. Carvers did not labor blindly. They carved with reverence, knowing they were shaping not just rock but a vessel for a spirit. The quarry was not merely a workplace, it was a temple. Each strike of the adze was both craft and ritual. Even their placement speaks the truth. The Moai do not face outward, toward the ocean. They face inward, toward the villages, the gardens, the people. They are guardians, their gaze fixed on those they protect. Only at Ahuakivi do the statues look toward the sea, and there the story is different. They are said to represent the first voyagers, forever staring toward the horizon from which they came. And yet, the hidden truth has another face, darker, more tragic. For the same devotion that gave rise to the Moai also became the chain that dragged the island down. The need to honor ancestors, to build larger and greater vessels for their mana, consumed the land's resources. Forests vanished for rollers and ropes. Soil thinned from overuse. Hunger spread because reverence demanded feasts, because pride demanded scale. The ancestors were meant to protect, but their hunger, through the people's devotion, grew insatiable. Imagine the contradiction. You stand before a Moai, your stomach empty, your children thin. You lay offerings at its feet, whispering prayers that it will bring rain, fish, food. Yet you know that to raise it required the very wood and labor that might have grown your crops, fed your nets. The Moai are guardians, but they are also burdens, demanding sacrifices the land could not sustain. This is the paradox at the heart of Rapa Nui. Devotion gave life, but devotion also hollowed it. The ancestors were carved to ensure survival, yet their monuments helped unravel it. That is the hidden truth. The Moai are both triumph and tragedy, protectors and destroyers, symbols of both love and downfall. When Europeans arrived, they saw only ruins, toppled statues, broken platforms. They imagined savagery, folly, a people who had destroyed themselves with blind ambition. But they did not see the devotion that had driven it, the faith that carved stone into spirit. They saw collapse, but not the centuries of meaning that lay beneath. Even toppled, the Moai carry their truth. Walk among them and you will feel it, the weight of memory, the echo of chants, the hum of manna still clinging to stone. The people may have turned to new gods, new rituals, but the old ones linger. In secret, mothers still whispered prayers to ancestors. In secret, children still touched the broken faces of statues and felt protection. Even fallen, the Moai never stopped being vessels. And today, as the world gazes at them with wonder, the truth endures. They are not just archaeological puzzles, not just feats of engineering. They are voices in stone, reminders that human beings long not only to live but to be remembered, not only to eat but to belong to something eternal. So as we stand here, in the silence of the island, feel the gaze of the Moai upon you. They are not mute. They are not gone. They still carry their hidden truth, that the line between life and death is thinner than we think, that memory can be carved into stone, that devotion can shape both glory and ruin. The statues rise in silence, their faces stern, their bodies scarred by centuries of wind and rain. We have followed their story from birth in the quarry to their collapse in the fields, from reverence to rivalry, from devotion to downfall. Yet even now, as we stand among them in the present, questions linger in the air like mist over the sea. Questions that no chant, no missionary's book, no explorer's journal has ever fully answered. These are the unsolved mysteries of Rapa Nui, woven into the very stone of the Moai. You feel it as you walk among them, a hum of incompletion. We know much, and yet we do not know enough. The ancestors stare with eyes unblinking, but they do not explain themselves. And so, we are left to wonder, to piece together fragments of story, archaeology, and myth. The first mystery, of course, is the question that has haunted every visitor since the first sails touched the horizon. How were they moved? We have seen theories, sledges, rollers, ropes, rocking the statues upright in a swaying walk. Experiments prove that it is possible, that with enough hands, enough rhythm, enough belief, the Moai can indeed shuffle across the island like giants half alive. But was this the way? Or is there something we have missed? Imagine the island centuries ago. The forests are dense, the ground alive with birds, the quarries loud with labor. A new statue is freed from the rock, and now it must travel. Perhaps men lash it to a wooden sled, pushing and pulling, logs groaning beneath its weight. The path wears deep scars, the soil trampled, the rollers snapping one by one. Or perhaps ropes alone suffice, dozens of men hauling in rhythm, the statue swaying, stumbling forward like a drunk but determined ancestor. Either way, the sight would have been awe-inspiring, stone that should have been still instead shuddering across the land, inch by inch. But the legends say otherwise. They say the Moai walked. They say the priests sang and chanted, and the statues obeyed. And here lies another mystery. What truth hides in that story? Was it merely metaphor, memory reshaped into myth? Or did the people truly believe their ancestors, reborn in stone, could stride across the island of their own will? Perhaps both. For to those who pulled the ropes, chanting with every heave, it must have felt as though the statues moved themselves, their weight lightened by the presence of spirit. And yet not all statues reach their destination. All across Rapa Nui, the landscape is littered with Moai abandoned mid-journey. Some lie face down in the grass, others half buried on slopes, as though caught in the act of walking and then frozen by some unseen force. Were they left behind because of accidents, ropes snapping, rollers breaking, bodies too heavy to lift again? Or were they left deliberately, offerings to ancestors who chose to remain where they fell? No one knows. Their silence is unbroken. Then there is the mystery of the quarry itself. Walk the slopes of Reino Raraku, and you will see hundreds of statues in various stages of birth. Some nearly finished, their faces smooth, their profiles proud. Others only outlines, their forms still trapped in the rock. Why were so many left behind? Was the work interrupted by war, by famine, by collapse? Or were these statues never meant to leave the quarry, their presence itself a sacred offering, a congregation of ancestors carved directly into the mountain? Archaeologists argue, but the mountain gives no answers. Another mystery lies in the eyes. For centuries, the Moai stood blind. Only when they were raised upon their platforms were coral eyes placed into their sockets, awakening them. The discovery of these eyes, fragments of white coral, with pupils of obsidian or red scoria, revealed a truth lost to time, that the statues once gazed with living intensity. But how many were ever given eyes? And what rituals accompanied that moment? Was it a sudden awakening, a transformation from stone to spirit? We know only glimpses. The red pucao, too, holds secrets. These great cylinders, carved from scoria at Punapau, rest atop some statues like massive crowns or topknots. Their weight is immense, some as heavy as the statues themselves. How were they lifted into place? Ramps, say some. Clever use of levers, say others. But the truth is uncertain. And their meaning, whether as symbols of status, echoes of hairstyles, or vessels of mana, is still debated. They remain, like the Moai themselves, half-revealed enigmas. And then, the greatest mystery of all, why did it end? Why did the building stop, the statues topple, the faith fracture? Was it environmental collapse, the forests gone, the soil exhausted, the people starving? Was it warfare, clans destroying one another's monuments in vengeance? Was it the arrival of Europeans, with their diseases, their weapons, their disruption of sacred traditions? Or was it all of these combined, a slow unraveling accelerated by outside forces? The truth may be all or none. The ancestors know, but they do not say. Imagine standing now in the twilight, surrounded by fallen Moai. Their faces are chipped, their bodies cracked, but still they radiate presence. They are questions carved in stone, riddles without answers, enigmas that defy time. And perhaps that is their final gift, to remind us that not all can be known, that mystery itself is sacred. For every theory, there is another. For every answer, a new question. The Moai are not simply relics of a lost society, they are living puzzles, each one a silence that demands listening, each one a face that asks without speaking. They are, in truth, mirrors. When we look at them, we do not only see the past. We see ourselves, our need to build, to believe, to leave behind something greater than flesh. We see ambition, devotion, rivalry, collapse. We see what it means to be human, carved larger than life, and left behind for eternity. And so the mysteries remain. How were they moved? Why were so many abandoned? What broke the balance of the island? What did the people truly believe as they strained under stone and sang to ancestors? We do not know. We may never know. And perhaps that is as it should be. For mystery has power, and the Moai, even in silence, still hold it. The mysteries linger, unanswered, yet still alive in stone. The Moai stand, or lie, across the island, their silence heavier than words, their questions echoing in every gust of wind that sweeps across the plains. But though the past may be fractured, the story of Rapa Nui does not end with collapse or ruin. No, look closer, and you will see that it continues, carried in the voices, hands, and hearts of those who remain. The people themselves are the true legacy of this island. Imagine standing in a village today, where children play among the ruins of Ahu, their laughter rising where chants once filled the air. They know the names of the statues, for each Moai still belongs to a clan, still holds memory even if toppled. They listen to elders tell stories of Hotumadue, the first king, of the long voyage that brought their ancestors here, of the birdman competitions at Orango when the Moai had fallen but pride still endured. These tales are not just bedtime stories. They are threads that weave the present to the past, fragile but unbroken. The legacy of Rapa Nui is resilience. For though plague, slavery, and missionaries sought to erase, something survived. The language, Rapa Nui, still spoken, carrying in its syllables the rhythm of the sea. Songs still sung in ceremonies, their melodies echoing chants once raised to the ancestors. Dances, where hands and hips mimic the flight of birds, the roll of waves, the planting of crops. Every gesture is a memory, every performance a defiance of forgetting. Walk with me to Anakina Beach, where legend says the first settlers came ashore. Here, Moai have been restored, raised once more upon their Ahu, their eyes blank but their presence alive. Tourists gather, snapping photographs, marveling at their scale. But for the islanders, this place is more than spectacle. It is connection. Each restoration is an act of healing, a way to honor ancestors whose faces lay in the dirt for centuries. Each stone refitted into a platform is a heartbeat returning, each Moai lifted is a memory standing tall again. And yet, legacy is not only in monuments. It is in survival itself. At the lowest point, only a few hundred Rapa Nui remained, their culture nearly extinguished. But from that remnant grew generations who carried the flame forward, who rebuilt families, who taught language to children, who whispered the old chants even when forbidden. Today, thousands of Rapa Nui live not only on the island but across the world, carrying their heritage with them like seeds. The story of collapse is real, but it is not the whole story. Equally real is the story of endurance. The Moai, too, carry new meaning. No longer only ancestors of clans, they are now ancestors of a people recognized by the world. They are symbols of cultural identity, of pride reclaimed. To the Rapa Nui, they are reminders that their history matters, that their island is not just a curiosity for outsiders but a living home, a sacred place. To the world, they are warnings, about ambition, about balance, about how easily abundance can be squandered. They are mirrors in which humanity sees both its greatness and its fragility. Imagine a ceremony at dawn today. Elders stand before a restored ahu, their hands raised in prayer. Children scatter flowers at the base of the moai, bright against the gray stone. Drums begin, low and steady, and voices rise in song. The ancestors are invoked, not as distant memories but as living presences, watching, guiding, enduring. The sea roars, the sun lifts over the horizon, and in that moment, the past and present fuse. The moai, silent, listens still. The legacy of Rapa Nui also lies in the lessons it offers. Archaeologists, ecologists, historians all come here, studying the ruins, the soil, the pollen buried in ancient sediment. They see a story of ingenuity and fragility, of brilliance and overreach. They warn us that the fate of Rapa Nui is not isolated, that all societies live on islands, whether of rock in the Pacific or of resources on Earth itself. The fall of Rapa Nui is a parable, a whisper across centuries reminding us to balance ambition with care. But for the descendants, the lesson is not just warning. It is pride. They know their ancestors carved giants from mountains, moved them without wheels or beasts, raised them against the sky with nothing but hands, ropes, and faith. They know their culture survived despite the worst of plague and chains. They know they are heirs to both triumph and tragedy, and that this inheritance makes them strong. At festivals, this pride bursts into color. Dancers painted with ochre and charcoal move to rhythms older than memory. Songs praise the ancestors, the land, the sea. Canoes are carved again, not for survival but for tradition, their prows sharp against the waves. Children learn not only Spanish and English, but Rapa Nui words, carrying the cadence of centuries. The island may be small, but its spirit is vast. Even the toppled statues are part of this legacy. Some remain fallen, their faces buried in grass, their bodies cracked. And that, too, is sacred. They are reminders of struggle, of mistakes, of the fragility of human endeavor. They are not erased or hidden, they are left to speak their silent truth. In them lives the memory of rivalry, of collapse, of lessons unheeded. The restored moai stand for pride. The fallen stand for humility. Together, they tell the whole story. So the legacy of Rapa Nui is layered, like the island itself, volcanic stone upon volcanic stone, eruption upon eruption, collapse upon renewal. It is the story of a people who carved giants, who endured ruin, who survived chains, and who now reclaim their voice. It is the story of memory made flesh and stone, toppled but unbroken. It is the story of resilience, echoing louder than silence, carried not only in the moai but in every heartbeat of those who still call the island home. And as you walk away from the platforms, the sea roaring at your side, the wind tugging at your hair, you realize that the moai are not just guardians of the past. They are guardians of the future, too. They remind us that what we build matters, that what we destroy matters, and that what we remember shapes who we are. The wind never stops on Rapa Nui. It rushes across the plains, rattles the grasses, hums in the hollows of stone. The sea, too, is endless, its waves striking the cliffs with the same rhythm they have kept for thousands of years. And through it all, the moai endure. Some stand tall again upon their ahu, eyes empty but faces proud. Others lie broken, their noses buried in the soil, their bodies cracked by centuries of weather. Yet whether upright or fallen, they remain. Silent. Watching. Waiting. This is how our journey ends, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with stillness. For the moai are stone guardians of silence, keepers of a story that is at once triumphant and tragic, a story carved into their faces and into the very bones of the island itself. Think of what they have witnessed. They saw the first canoes crest the horizon, bringing families guided by stars and memory, who stepped onto the sand with hope and fear in their hearts. They saw forests fall to adzes, gardens bloom in volcanic soil, villages rise in the shelter of cliffs. They saw themselves born from the quarry, chipped and smooth, dragged across plains, lifted onto platforms with chants and sweat. They saw feasts and festivals, songs and ceremonies, pride swelling as each statue grew taller, each ahu stretched longer. And they saw the decline. They watched as forests thinned, as soil grew weary, as hunger spread. They heard the shouts of battle, the cries of vengeance as clans toppled one another's monuments. They felt the crash of their own bodies against the earth, faces shattered, pride broken. They saw sails appear on the horizon, strangers arriving with iron, with guns, with disease. They heard the wails of families torn apart by slavers, the whispers of prayers unanswered as plague spread. They saw their people reduced to a remnant, their chants silenced, their traditions buried beneath foreign tongues. And still they remain. The Moai are not merely relics, they are witnesses. Silent historians who do not write but endure, whose presence tells more than words ever could. To stand before them is to feel time collapse, to feel centuries press upon your shoulders. Their silence is not emptiness. It is weight, it is memory, it is truth too vast for speech. What, then, do they say in their silence? Perhaps this, that greatness and ruin are never far apart. That devotion can build wonders, but also consume the world that sustains it. That pride can bind a people together, but also set them against each other. That memory, no matter how fragile, can outlast chains, plague, and time itself. Rapa Nui is small, a speck in the Pacific. Yet its story is vast, carrying lessons for all humanity. We, too, live on an island of limited resources, our Earth, surrounded by the dark sea of space. We, too, build monuments, striving for legacy, seeking to carve our names into eternity. And like the people of Rapa Nui, we risk taking more than the land can give, demanding too much of the ancestors we claim to honor. The Moai are not only their story. They are our warning, but they are also hope. For though the people of Rapa Nui suffered, though they were thinned by disease and chains, they did not vanish. Their descendants still sing, still dance, still speak the language, still honor the ancestors. The Moai, once seen as broken relics, now stand again, some restored, some left fallen as reminders, but all alive with meaning. The silence they keep is not only grief. It is endurance. Imagine yourself now, standing at dawn on the island's edge. The sky is pale with the first light, the sea glimmers silver, and before you towers a row of Moai. They cast long shadows across the ground, stretching toward you, as though drawing you into their gaze. The wind tugs at your clothes, the air tastes of salt, and for a moment, you feel as though the ancestors themselves are near. You hear no words. You see no movement. And yet you know you are not alone. This is the gift of the Moai, the silence that speaks louder than sound. They remind us that memory can be carved into stone, that devotion can leave marks deeper than centuries, that even in collapse there is survival. They remind us that to be human is to seek connection beyond death, to reach for eternity even with hands of flesh. So let us end here, not with answers but with presence. Let us stand together on the windswept plains of Rapa Nui, the sea crashing below, the Moai gazing above. Let us feel their silence settle around us, heavy and profound, like a cloak. Let us breathe with them, in rhythm with the waves, in rhythm with the wind, in rhythm with the centuries that pass and the centuries still to come. And as the night deepens, as the stars blaze overhead, the same stars that guided the first canoes, the same stars that watched the quarries glow with firelight, you close your eyes. You hear the wind, the sea, the breath of the island itself. You feel the gaze of stone guardians who never speak, but never leave. And so, as the night settles, may these echoes of the past guide you gently into dreams, where ancestors walk once more, and the Moai keep watch in silence. Forever.